Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and we've been waiting for this weekend for months. The start of the NFL season. It's finally upon us. Hey, and this was supposed to be the Saints' first true Super Bowl run literally in 7 years. That magical 2011 year when they got to the NFC divisional round and they almost beat the San Francisco 49ers. We know what happened there. But this run after last year's kind of debacle in the divisional game against the Minnesota Vikings, well, the Saints were supposed to take that next step. A lot of prognosticators had them going to the Super Bowl and possibly even winning it. And then Sunday came. Let me preface this by saying I've been in Iowa all weekend. I worked the Iowa State game there in Iowa City where the Hawkeyes play. And that game set football back years. It was 6-3, literally, with a couple minutes left. That's the lowest scoring that rivalry had been since 1917. Well, then I get back to the Dome. I take 2 flights to get here. I'm in the booth there with Zach Streif and Deuce McAllister, and how about this game? I mean, everybody scored. Every time they had a possession, Saints scored. Bucks scored. Saints scored. Bucks scored. Saints scored again to take a 17-14 lead, and we know what happened after that. The bottom dropped out, and I'm going to say this. The offense, they played like they belonged in the Super Bowl. Drew Brees, what else can you say about this 39-year-old marvel? 439 yards passing. That's the most in the NFL this weekend. 3 TD passes. He looked sharp and fantastic. Alvin Kamara, a pinball machine. Get this, 17 total touches. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 passing. He had 8 first downs included, 4 passing, 4 receiving, I should say, and 4 rushing. And he also had a 2-point conversion. He was on fire. Michael Thomas, 16 receptions. By the way, anyone with 18 targets or less has never had 16 receptions. And that's right. He had 18 targets or less. He had 180 yards, and he had a big TD. He should have had a second one. They robbed him. That's when he got vultured by Kamara at the goal line when they didn't bother to review it because they wanted to get it in. But he had a huge fumble, as you see right there in the game. But, you know, people fumble. It happens. They also had another one with Gillislee. But the other side, you got to give the Tampa Bay Bucks credit. Career backup Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's had some great times starting. Remember that 2015 season with the Jets? Played fantastic. But, man, he was the player of the week in the NFL this week. 5 touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 rushing, over 400 yards in passing as well. He is on pace for 80 touchdowns this season. Look out, Peyton Manning. Oh, maybe not. And how about this? Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. These guys were left for dead, particularly Jackson. He didn't get drafted in most fantasy leagues. Well, they both get over 100 yards. Jackson gets 2 touchdowns. You realize what a deep threat he is again. And Mike Evans looks like a Pro Bowler. So hopefully next week they play in Cleveland, well, at home versus Cleveland, and hopefully there will be a different result. And speaking of Iowa, when I come back from Iowa, I'm looking at the scores of the game. I didn't get to watch the LSU game, but I'm thinking 31-0. That's got to be a good victory, right? Well, apparently not. I think most of the fans were very upset. All I had to do was take a peek at Twitter and notice that 31-0 wasn't good. We know Joe Burrow has solidified himself as the LSU starter. He looked very good against Miami. but apparently very inconsistent in this game against Southeastern. Nick Brissett, the senior, though, I got to give him all the credit in the world. He has been waiting his turn, and so far 2 for 2 on 100-plus yard games. He is the former U-High star, so congratulations to him, Nick. I think the play of the game has to be that beautiful Hail Mary to Stephen Sullivan. When you talk about high-pointing a ball as a receiver, I don't think you can do it any better than what he did going up for that ball. He obviously has great leaps and long arms, and he pulled it in, and that was certainly a highlight. But the star of the game has to be the LSU defense. Listen, they only gave up 17 to Miami. That was really a 3-point game until the last 6 minutes when they were kind of going crazy, and they shut out Southeastern. I know it's a Southland Conference team, but still, a shutout is a shutout. Southeastern can score some points, and they put Devin White is definitely the star of that defense. And next week, it's Auburn on the Plains. You got number 7 Auburn against number 12 LSU. This is what it's supposed to be about. Early season SEC tussle that will matter in a big way when it comes down late in the season if both these teams continue to play well. Jarrett Stidham, as you see there, the Baylor transfer who had a really nice year with Auburn. He has got NFL written all over him. So these LSU DBs better be ready, because if you don't put pressure on Stidham, he will eat you alive. So good luck for the Tigers in that one. And let's go to the local game here. Tulane and Nichols, both these teams, well, they came off overtime games the week before. Tulane lost that heartbreaker to Wake Forest in overtime where they led most of that game. And then Nichols, well, we know what they did. They went to Kansas, and as a Southland Conference team, they won that game in overtime as well. But here, as far as this one goes, the Texas Tech transfer, Corey Dauphine, cannot say enough good things about him. Only 6 carries, 152 yards. In fact, at halftime, he had 2 carries for over 100 yards. A couple scores there. But the defense, as you see right there, they were all over the former Rummel star, Chase Forcade. He got beat up in this game. But I got to give Chase Forcade some credit, because I think this guy is one of the best leaders in the South right now. He played great at that game against Kansas. They beat a Power 5 conference team, like I said before, and that just does not happen very often. I know Kansas is not good, but they get a superior athlete than what Nichols would normally get. So kudos to the Nichols program. They are on the way up. Let's switch it over to tennis. Hey, the U.S. Open, I love tennis. I love to watch it, particularly when they get down to the later rounds. But this weekend ended with a little controversy. I'll get to that in a second. But first, in the men's final, Novak Djokovic. How about him? He beat the Argentinian Juan Martín del Potro. And by the way, Del Potro, if you remember, beat Nadal, who was playing fantastic tennis. Nadal had to bow out. But people might not remember this or know it if you don't follow tennis very much. Novak Djokovic just won his 14th major title. Think about this. In golf, Tiger Woods has 14 majors. And right now, Djokovic is tied for 3rd all-time with majors with the American Pete Sampras. And I think that might surprise a few of you. Rafael Nadal has 16 majors, and Federer leads all men with 20. But how about this in the women's? We all know the most accomplished tennis player of all time, and in my opinion only, I guess I should say that, is Serena Williams. Hey, this woman has she's got 23 major titles and countless tournament titles, but she got to the finals yet again in 2 big tournaments in the last couple months. But despite the fact that she just had a baby less than a year ago. Hey, 2 months ago, remember, she got to the Wimbledon finals as the 25th seed and did it again this weekend at the U.S. Open. She was ranked 17th seed. That's because she's coming back from not playing in a while, and you can never count her out. But unfortunately, she lost both of those tournaments. But what she's doing right now is superhuman. This year's winner right there, you see her, Naomi Osaka, who won the first major ever for a Japanese tennis player. Congratulations to her. But unfortunately, what's going to be remembered for this tournament, from years on, I imagine you're going to see highlights of this, is Serena's brouhaha with the chair umpire, Carlos Ramos. She got into it. Listen, I'm all about Serena, and I've gone on record as saying she might be the most accomplished athlete in any sport, particularly where she's come from. But she's got to do better than this. I know that she had it right. I know there were bad calls in this game, in this match, but the fact is, Serena is the best in the world in both men and women's when you talk about history, and I just want to see her show a little more sportsmanship, not really for what's going on now, but for all the kids watching. There's so many young tennis players that love the game, and I just wish that she would act a little bit better, particularly what a statesman she is for the game. Hey, let's switch it over to football real quick again. what we saw on Sunday night with Aaron Rodgers, I know all these fantasy owners that have him were just devastated when he went down with that injury. It looked like he might even be out for the season yet again. You remember it happened a few years ago and again last year. And he got carted off, and obviously that was precautionary to see. He had the x-rays, and all of a sudden, like Willis Reed, back in 1970, the former Louisiana native went with the Knicks, walks onto the field after missing Game 6, the court, I should say, and then they beat the Lakers. That's exactly what happened. They're down 20-0 in this game, and he comes back. And Aaron Rodgers adds to his legacy with a 24-23 win on Sunday night. If that didn't get you ready for the NFL football season, nothing will. And speaking of quarterbacks, I've got to give it up for Sam Darnold last night. Congratulations. His first play as an NFL quarterback. First play. He throws a pick six. He's down 7-0, but he did not let that bother him. The Jets went on to win 48-17, and Sam Darnold looks like he is going to be special. Hey, got a great show for you today. We're not doing these superstar player and coaches. Hey, next week I got a Pels player and possibly even their GM. But this week we're going to get information. That's what we want. This is the beginning of the football season. We're going to have Saints Mike Triplett from ESPN. He's going to come in and talk all about the Saints. We're also going to have Jacques Doucet up there at WAFB in Baton Rouge. He's going to come in. And then I've got a special guest for you, Johnny Blancher. His friends call him John, some call him Johnny, but he is the owner of Rock and Bowl and Yale College Inn. But he is also one of the greatest local baseball players from the 1960s in the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. All that coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
Scotty says, for I watch my TV show. Scotty says, on Primetime Sports. Scotty says, for I watch my TV show. I got the Primetime Sports. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I can't wait to get to this one. Hey, don't forget, next week we're going to have Sheck Diallo from the New Orleans Pelicans, power forward, and probably Dell Demps. If not next week, we'll definitely have him the week after. Remember, training camp starts. But right now, it's all NFL. The NFL season, as you know, finally begins. We've been waiting months and months for this. The Saints are a legitimate Super Bowl contender for the first time, honestly, since Bounty Gate. I think you can really say that. Obviously, 2011, they were so close, and of course, 2009, they won it. The opening game did not turn out so well. Offense, spectacular. Defense, pretty horrid. And Mike Triplett, who covers the Saints for years with ESPN, and before that, obviously, with the Times-Picayune, is with us again.
Scott.
It's so good to see you yet again. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Yeah, the NFL season started, but
Well, surprising.
the Saints haven't quite started all the way up yet.
I mean, listen, they outscored their opponents 63-7 the last, or 64-7, something like that, the last two preseason games. Not that they matter, but you won 3 out of 4. You felt pretty good about last season. Camp injury-free for the most part.
Yeah.
All positives going in.
Yeah.
And then they go down that first drive. They get the quick 7. You're like, oh, this is cake. And then what happened?
Look, and here's the biggest surprise. 4 plays in Tampa Bay's 4th play of the game. It's a 58-yard touchdown. Longer than any play they give up all of last season. They do it 4 plays into this season. But the bigger surprise is it was just relentless from that point on.
It was.
You would think maybe they're going to show some inconsistency, maybe they're going to show some rust, but then in the second quarter they might have 3 straight 3-and-outs. In the third quarter they might force a turnover, highs and lows.
Nothing.
It was all lows.
The punter had a day off for them.
Yeah,
and the
punt.
Saints, for the most part, early.
Yeah.
I mean, they had nothing. I mean, it was – I came from Iowa. Your alma mater.
A little different game.
6-3 late in the game. I was putting out records saying it hasn't been this low scoring in this rivalry since 1917.
Yeah.
And I get there to the Dome, and it's like, oh, my goodness.
This was the highest scoring opening game in NFL history, I think.
Really?
I think it was.
Wow. Well, I was with Streif and Deuce in the booth, and I got there literally right before the kickoff, and so I was following it very closely, working in the game, and this team – we scored, they scored. We scored, they scored. We scored again, and they scored 6 straight scores. Yeah. And the Saints, by the way, people forget, they were up 17-14, and all of a sudden, Tampa Bay went on a 34-7 run. 34-7. It was 48-24. Yeah. And then the Saints made a scurry comeback.
Well, I mean, look, you laugh about saying the 2 turnovers made all the difference in a game where you gave up 48 points, but it did. The Saints, Mike Gillislee fumbles and they return it, and then later in the game, Michael Thomas fumbles when they were nearing field goal territory. They might have won 55-48 if there's no turnovers.
Could have been that Eli game, 52-49.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the kind of game it was, except for the Saints were the ones who made the two mistakes, or you could say
there's one of them right there.
The Buccaneers made the two defensive plays, and the Saints. Look, the Saints defense, if they're going to have a bad day, they need to make up for it with game-changing, momentum-changing plays, and they failed in both counts.
0 turnovers for the defense. They gave up over 500 yards. This was shades of what we've seen a lot since Bounty Gate.
And one of the worst we've ever seen, too, which is saying a lot.
Well, can this, obviously, the question of the day, can this be healed? I mean, what is the next step? Because this defense was lauded coming into the season.
Look, we have a track record now that this defense was so good last year. There's reason to have faith that this was maybe a one-off. I thought maybe they were a little overhyped going into this year, and I expected some highs and lows. When people were saying that they're going to be a top 10 defense, I thought maybe they'll be more like a top 15.
Which is really all you need.
Which is really all you need.
Right.
Or there will be highs and lows. Remember that Week 17 against Tampa Bay, they didn't have a good game last year. But nobody expected this. I certainly didn't. I don't expect this going forward. The pass rush was completely ineffective. We expect that to be better. And the secondary in particular is supposed to be the strength of this defense. To have those guys on an island that they trust, Marshawn Lattimore and Ken Crawley, just get beat by over a yard on some of those deep passes. And Marcus Williams, who was as impressive as any player in training camp, not being in the picture. It was really surprising.
I mean, Von Bell got burned badly the first play. Coleman got embarrassed at one time when he went inside instead of going deep with the receiver. There was no clean hands. Yeah. I mean, seriously. And I don't know. People overreact, and that's one thing I've learned not to ever do in sports, particularly when you're talking about pro athletes, because it changes week to week, and it is so fickle in the NFL.
And look, the Saints will point to last year.
Right.
They were 0-2, very similar start. This game looked a lot like their game in Minnesota in Week 1 last year.
And New England, too.
Then Week 2, they got
annihilated.
They allowed over 1,000 yards in the first two games last year, and then they win 8 straight. So that can happen. The bigger reason for concern this year is at home against Tampa Bay and at home against Cleveland was supposed to be your way to ease into the season. The schedule is not getting any easier in October and November. So, of course, you don't want to say season's over if they start 0-2. But, boy, a win at home against Cleveland feels pretty important right now.
And Cleveland, who was 1-31 in their previous, 2 seasons. Actually, I think it goes up to 1-36 before.
1-31-1 now.
Well, no. But my point is they lost 36 out of 37, and then they played Pittsburgh, one of the elite teams in the league, to a tie. Obviously, they had no Le'Veon Bell, but the reserve did fantastic. This team's got some stars. You're looking at one of them right there. T.J. Ward's another one, 2 interceptions in that game. But, you got Myles Garrett on the defensive line. You've got weapons on the outside now. Jarvis Landry.
It's time for the Saints cornerbacks to show they can show up because you're getting, Josh Gordon and Jarvis Landry. It's time for this defense to show they can contain a quarterback in the pocket, which they couldn't do with Ryan Fitzpatrick because Tyrod Taylor just ran for 77 yards in the touchdown last week. Duke Johnson catching passes out of the backfield. I mean, this is an offense that will pose matchup problems, even though they are quote unquote the Browns.
So let me get some positive here because the comeback was impressive because even Deuce was like, it's not happening, and Zach was playing the optimist, and I was high-fiving Zach. I was even like, come on, Deuce, there's a chance. There's a chance, and sure enough, they missed that field goal after they'd already gotten the 6 and the 2-point conversions. They needed 3 2-point conversions with touchdowns, which is very hard to do. And then they got the next one.
Look, if you want to be an optimist, it's pretty easy. This offense looks awesome. And they don't even have Mark Ingram yet, and they didn't have Andrews Pete in this game, and they still looked awesome. Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara might be the 2 best playmakers the Saints have had in the entire Peyton Breeze era, which is saying a lot. And when you need them, you can rely on them. And they didn't have many games that played out this way last year, as it were. So Drew Brees only threw for 23 TD passes. Michael Thomas only caught 5 TD passes. But we didn't see games where they had to spend the whole second half throwing very often. And it's a good reminder that, if we do need to throw it, we've still got it.
But they still put up giant numbers in the first half. I remember Drew had like 148 or something going into the second quarter, and then he had like over 200 at halftime. So it wasn't just the catch-up numbers. You're talking about epic stuff when you're talking about 16 catches for 180 yards. I mean, there's never been an NFL player that had less than 18 targets and got 16 catches ever. So this is remarkable stuff. you're talking about every time Kamara touches the ball, he does something. 8 first downs, 3 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion in 17 touches. The dude's doing something. So the offense. So let's talk about positives since we just spent 10 minutes railing defense. The offense is special.
Yeah, it's special. And we didn't see the run-pass balance that we saw last year. But there's still reason to believe it's there. It's still a really good offensive line. Kamara can run through the tackles. You're a little concerned that they never figured out who's going to replace Mark Ingram as that second running back. And then the guy they throw in there at the last minute, Mike Gillislee, fumbles in this game. But it's just 3 more weeks without Ingram, and you figure you'll see better with Gillislee and Jonathan Williams during that 3-week stretch. There's no reason not to think this is once again one of the top 3 offenses.
Well, I had 2 flights on Sunday morning, one very, very early, and the layover that I had from Iowa to Atlanta, I was watching the TV show. It happened to be Rex Ryan, who was Gillislee's old coach in Buffalo, and he could not stop raving about Gillislee, and the Patriots gave the Saints a gift, basically, by handing this guy. He said he was his favorite player that played for him, and he loved him. And he said, and so once the fumble happens, you know what, Peyton, I mean, he didn't play him the rest of the time, and all of a sudden, what is your take on this running back situation in the next 3 weeks?
Like I said, I mean, I think Jonathan Williams and Gillislee are good enough. They're pros.
What about Boston Scott? Any thoughts there?
I'm surprised he didn't make. I'm surprised they cut him. He's back on the practice squad now. Maybe they'll make a switch there, but obviously they decided they wanted these veterans in there more. Maybe that could change after the fumble. But here's what I said about the breakdown. They don't want to overwork Kamara, and they had to in this game because they were playing catch-up. They don't want that to be the script, as Sean Payton said. But Kamara's going to get all the important touches.
Right.
When they get in the red zone, it's going to be Kamara. If they're in hurry up, they're going to be thrown to Kamara. Kamara's going to be the one in pass protection. They'd love to give him a break every 3rd series or so, but Kamara's going to be in there for all the important touches.
Ginn, Meredith, Traquan Smith didn't do much in this game. Ginn got the touchdown. You feel confident with the receiving corps?
Well, it was important. It was important that Ginn looked that good because they have a lot of depth that's exciting for the future. If Cam Meredith gets healthy and gets up to speed, if Traquan Smith starts to master the playbook, and we've seen his big playability, but they needed the reliable guys, and Ted Ginn Jr. had a really reliable Week 1 performance, and so did Ben Watson with 4 nice catches over the middle. Well. So that'll give time for Meredith and Traquan Smith to develop. If you've got you've got Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Ted Ginn Jr., and Ben Watson as 4 guys that Breeze is comfortable with, knows he can rely on. It gives those other guys a time that they're not thrust into major roles.
Curious what you tell us about that locker room after the game. What was the feeling in there?
Stunned and unhappy, but not panic. I think it helps that they went through this last year and that they know that they bounced back in such an emphatic way. And look, there's confidence with these guys. The reason we had high expectations for the Saints is because they proved that they can play good football. But this is, as Marshawn Lattimore called it, a slap in the face that they probably needed.
I remember, the reason I asked the question, I remember a few years ago when I was going to the locker room every game, you had some situations with the Junior Gillette. I mean, he would melt down a little bit, and I'm not talking to anybody. Even a couple years ago.
No, he never didn't talk to the media.
Well, but he was, okay, but some people were like that.
Brandon Browner.
Browner a couple years ago, that was nightmarish, but nothing like that.
And look, you got to be careful because a season can unravel. Look, expectations were high in 2014, just as high as they were this year. Archie Manning called it the best roster, he thought, in Saints history.
Right.
People were predicting him to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh, right.
And when that season unraveled, it tests a locker room. They believe they have the right guys to be resilient, but you get tested if expectations are this high and they don't start out the way you want.
I would say you test this restaurant, but I already know your wife loves it. It's called Chez de la Chez. You know my man Evan. He loves to have you over there.
Great
also, I don't know if you've been on since we've done the Task thing, but Task Performance gives us these wonderful workout shirts. You're going to love that. Feel that. Tell me what you think.
Perfect.
I mean, soft. It's going to be, you're going to throw rocks at all your other workout apparel. Mike Triplett, ESPN. I got to thank him so much. Want to thank coming up. I'm not thanking him yet because he's coming up. It's going to be John Blancher, the holy bowler we like to call him. He's a Yale College in Rock Bowl and a great baseball player in the 70s. And after that, we're going to talk LSU Tigers. None other than Jacques Doucet coming from up the river, right there from WAFB, right here on Primetime Sports.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports, and I got a special guest for you right now. We just talked Saints with Mike Triplett, and we're about to talk LSU in the next segment with Jacques Doucet, but right here we have a New Orleans treasure, a guy that saved two of my favorite places in town, Yo College Inn and Mid-City Lanes, which became Rock and Bowl, and also one of the greatest players in New Orleans history from the 1970s. He played at Rummel, 1970-71, state champions. Then he played at Loyola. They were a powerhouse back in the day, and then he went on to Northwest to play for the Northwestern State team. Hey, by the way, his name is John Blancher. His son is Johnny Blancher, and I think he might have been Johnny before that. But here he is right here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
So, wait. So when you were growing up, weren't you Johnny? Or were you always
Yes,
been Johnny?
I was Johnny. And, you know, everybody knew me as a kid back then. But when my son was born, we had different middle names. He wasn't going to be Johnny Jr.
Right.
So I took John and gave him Johnny.
You gave him Johnny. You passed the mantle down.
Yes, I did.
Well, we'll get into you in a second, but let's talk real quick about Johnny.
Okay.
Because he's done some great things in life. He was a ball player himself, and now he's running your new Rock and Bowl out in Lafayette, which is phenomenal. There's Johnny right there. Talk about you, man.
Well, my son is a special guy, and he played at Rummel High School also.
Yeah.
And he was all city and at third base at Rummel. Went to LSU. Didn't play much, but played under Skip Berkman.
Sure.
And Skip was one of the greatest influences on Johnny. The motivation and the organizational skills that Johnny has really came from Skip and not his dad.
Not his dad?
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll get into that because I want to talk about what he's doing out there with y'all, because as a New Orleanian growing up, Yo College Inn was something that if you played at Carrollton Ballpark, you went to Yo College Inn after, because it was right down the street. There's old Yo College Inn.
Well, College Inn, was opened in 1933, and an interesting, a little segment of history there. Emil Ruffin, who was the 85-year-old surviving son from whom we purchased it, he played baseball in 1938 at LSU.
Wow.
And he was on the team with Alex Box.
Alex Box.
Yeah.
This legend we always hear about but don't know anything about.
And in 1938, he was on the team, and his dad called him and said, "Son, you have to leave LSU. I need you to run the restaurant, and I need you to work a half shift." And the half shift was midnight to noon every day. Right. And he was a great baseball fan, Mr. Emil. Yeah. And so it was. We bought it from an old New Orleans family and family run, and we are a family run business. When I first had it, I had my son and my son-in-law and my son's brother-in-law were three young men, just like they were three young brothers that ran the College Inn for the first 70 years, and we've been in the last 15.
That picture right there has got the shirt you are wearing right now that says, "Welcome Rock and Bowl," and that pen with the welcome is legendary as well. Mid-City Lanes, I remember that was used to be on Carrollton by Tulane. Now it became Rock and Bowl. Now Rock and Bowl is over there by Earhart and on Carrollton, set back off the street right next to your old College Inn. So now you own both these establishments that are historically New Orleans. Talk about how you got into that.
It's a blessing. In 1988, I went to Medjugorje, Yugoslavia, on a pilgrimage, and on the mountain there, I asked to help me find something. I was down on my luck, and my family was down on its luck. And my mother and father were out of work, and my sister had just gotten divorced and moved in with them. And I felt responsible. On the mountain, I asked to help me find something to take care of my family. I was back 1 week, and this friend of mine said, "John, you want to hear a business deal?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "You want to buy a bowling alley?" I said, "A bowling alley?" I knew nothing about bowling. I had never bowled in a league in my life.
Right.
And anyway, I took it over just because I really thought I was getting directed by the Blessed Mother. And I ended up taking it over on All Saints Day, 1988. Started working 7 days a week, 16, 18-hour days, and it morphed into the Rock and Bowl. I was there.
For those that don't know, because this show is all around the South and it's definitely all around Louisiana, what is Rock and Bowl? Because I think it's a great concept, and here in New Orleans we know it, but explain that.
You know, it's very difficult to explain because people have these preconceptions of a bowling alley, and they have preconceptions of a restaurant, and they have preconceptions of a catering hall, music club, and it really is all in one space. It's not separate.
It's phenomenal.
It's all together.
It's
in
all
some
together.
kind of way, it works. And we started doing music in '89, and it's grown to now we do music about five nights a week. And I had that, and in '03 I bought
But not just music. You have huge acts.
Yeah,
I mean, you really do. As good as New Orleans can offer.
You know, I was fortunate, and when I was, first taking over.
That's a good shot of you, by the way. There you go. My man's still in shape. He's working it.
When I first took over, there was this lull in the New Orleans music scene. There were a lot of New Orleans legends that had no place to play.
Right.
And for some reason, I was able to get these guys, at a very low price initially, but people came to see them. And it started out with they had no place to play to where when they played my place, they were making the best money they had made in years. And, so that source of talent was there, and I was a recipient of it just by the grace of God, really. And then I got involved with Zydeco Music and started that in '93, and it just took off. And across the state, I mean, when I say across the state, primarily Southwest Louisiana, Rock and Bowl became a well-known spot because Zydeco bands that would draw nothing anywhere else in the city would bring 200 to 400 people every Thursday night. And,
wow. What you probably don't know, by the way, because I was the president of my school, when you have a reunion, you have to get certain people to help put it together. And it seems like I'm always getting drawn into that. But a decade ago, we had our 25th reunion at the old Rock and Bowl at Mid-City Lanes, and it was a fabulous time. And I'm sure you're having them at the new one.
No, no. This past weekend, Chappelle had a reunion. The weekend before was Dominican.
Yeah.
Brother Martin, Rummel, Jesuit.
It's so much
Holy
fun.
Cross. We do lots of reunions, lots of wedding rehearsal dinners. We do wedding receptions. I mean, the birthday parties. We've had birthday parties for 3-year-olds and for 103-year-olds.
Wow!
And
wow!
It's just one of those.
I want to have a 103rd one.
Party spots. I'm hoping to get there.
Hey, by the way, I have to bring up the Lafayette because this is your new baby. It's an old bank in Lafayette. You saw a picture of Johnny earlier. That was when it was a bank, I guess. Yeah. Teller stations. But there it is right there. This just opened just a couple months ago, if that.
Right.
And tell people what this is about because I can't wait to get to Lafayette to check it all out.
It really is a great spot. In 2005, we evacuated to Lafayette during Katrina, and we really thought we were not going to be able to come back to New Orleans, and we started looking at Lafayette, but then we were fortunate enough to get reopened. But it was in the back of our mind that if we ever did expand, Lafayette, Louisiana, we thought was our next logical location.
It's a jewel right now. Lafayette's booming.
I love Lafayette.
Yeah.
It's really a great town.
It is.
And so anyway, we started looking, and just years we looked for spots, and were almost close to closing deals, several times. But then we came across this, what used to be the Whitney Bank Building at 905 Jefferson Street, which is in the heart of downtown.
Great spot.
And it's where we were banking during, Katrina, and we were in that bank with no idea, broke with everything underwater. And 13 years later, we ended up buying the building and adding on to it and converting it to the new Rocket Bowl. So it encompasses 2 floors, and we have 16 lanes, a stage. The stage and the dance floors in the middle, between 16 lanes, 8 lanes on each side. We have balconies and suites.
It's a must-go-to. You have to go see it.
It really is. Really, I think it. I'm a little biased, but truthfully, I think it's the best music venue in the state of Louisiana.
No doubt. I mean, honestly, I'm with you. I've seen it. It's amazing. I want to talk about your baseball career real quick because we have some old footage of you, some video. It's a little grainy. It's not new. But, I mean, you were a superstar of your time. Loyola was what LSU is now. I mean, as far as maybe not winning all the national championships, but they were the best team in Louisiana at that time.
I want to clarify. I wouldn't consider myself to be the best superstar, but I was playing with the best superstars of my era.
Right on. All right.
They were on my teams.
Right.
And
they were on my teams.
We saw some things. But, back then you didn't have a whole lot of footage.
Look at you, man, taking it. I can see that. That's nice. That's fiery. Fire.
Yeah, I was a little fiery when I played. Once I was between the lines, I played pretty hard, and I was pretty demonstrative when I was out there.
Work hard and play hard, right? That's what you got to do.
Yes, indeed. And hustled every step of the way. But I was in the 1970 and 71 American Legion State Championship teams with Shaft Brothers, which was Rummel-based.
Sure.
And then 72, I was able to, Rag Sherman offered me a scholarship, and to me that was just the pinnacle of my life at the time, because Loyola had really the best baseball program in the state.
I mean, Rags had been doing it for years. He is a true legend in this city.
Rags was one of the great mentors of my life, and I loved the man. A great coach. There was nobody more fun to play for than Rags.
And right before Bobby Hebert and Ez Orgeron went to Northwestern, you were doing it up there in Natchitoches yourself.
Yes, I was. I was the graduate assistant baseball coach after my school, career had ended. And the wide receiver coach for Northwest Louisiana was recruiting Southwest Louisiana. And he came to me and he said, just talking, that he really liked this kid from South Lafourche, but he was very green. Because, Bobby, he was playing tight end when the season started.
Don't tell Bobby he was green.
Oh, he was.
He thought he was ready. Well, I know he was a little, he's from cutoff, so he's a little bit back. Bobby has grown in our hearts exponentially since back in those days when he won state title in 1977.
Yes, he did.
By the way, thank you for everything you've done for the city of New Orleans, bringing back Rock Bowl. Yale College Inn is just such a special place in so many people's hearts, and the food went from being a good spot to hang out to, I'm going to say this, gourmet food. It's phenomenal.
Thanks. They've done a great job.
And you work hard at it. I'm going to give you a gift to another restaurant.
Oh, great, yeah.
This one's down the road off Carrollton.
I've been wanting to check it out. Yeah.
It's called Chez de la Chaise. You know where it is, right off there. It's between Carrollton and Broadway on Maple. So not far from you. You're on Carrollton by Earhart, both the Rocket Bowl and Yale College Inn. And by the way, I know you like to work out. That's going to be their favorite workout shirt of all time. I can promise you to feel it. Feel that.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. John Blancher. Used to be Johnny Blancher. Yes. And his son now, Johnny, is a great guy as well. Hey, check them out in Lafayette. I promise you won't be disappointed. Obviously, keep going to the one here in New Orleans. Hey, coming up next, we already talked Saints. It's going to be LSU time. I've got Jacques Doucet coming all the way in from Baton Rouge to talk about the Tigers and what he expects for the rest of the season from them. Coming back on Primetime Sports. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I want to thank the Holy Bowler, I should say, John Blancher, and of course, Mike Triplett. But here, LSU fans cannot wait for this segment because I've got my man from up the river, Jacques Doucet, who I've known since 2001 when he started WAFB. He and Steve Snyder used to send me footage of all the great high school football players from the Baton Rouge area. But here he is. He's been now there for 17 years, and he's been covering LSU sports for at least 20. And he's been on the show once before, but here we're going to talk about this year's version of the LSU Tigers. Welcome back,
Scott.
Jacques Doucet.
Thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
I know I said it once before. Some say Doucet, some say Doucet. I've always said Doucet, but I know it's French and we're in Louisiana.
I got called both growing up. When I started at the station, they said, well, what are you going to call yourself? I said, I guess Doucet sounds better for TV. And then sure enough, early Doucet rolled around a few years later, and I picked the wrong one, I guess.
Better than Duckett. All right, we'll just go there. LSU Tigers, a lot of controversy in the offseason. Quarterbacks leaving, players getting thrown off. What's been your take of the couple months leading into the season for the Tigers?
Well, the expectations were lower than they have been in 20 years. They were 24 and 25 in the polls. They were unranked. Nick Saban's first year in 2000, coming off a 3-8 year. At SEC Media Days, they were picked 5th out of 7 teams in the SEC West. So the expectations were low, and a lot of people were kind of very hesitant, a lot of trepidation going into this Miami opener, but they blew the doors off Miami, had a 30-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Didn't finish strong this past weekend against Southeastern. It was a ho-hum game. Won the game 31-0. So this week it's back to big boy football and really a different level of competition. Coach Orgeron admits Auburn is a better team than Miami. It's going to be tough on the road.
And I know they haven't gotten anywhere yet. I mean, they got the impressive win in Miami, up in Dallas. They're 2-0 though. Here's my thing. When I heard the over and under was 7 wins, I understand why they do things like this because you don't have a lot of returning starters, a lot of question marks at all the skill positions. But this is LSU, and I remember going on Twitter and defending because for one reason I said LSU is the only Power 5 conference team that hasn't won less than 8 games since 2000. The only one, and only Boise State can, and they have a much weaker schedule. So no one was giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I understand A&M's a pretty good team. Mississippi State obviously beat them pretty easily last year. So they were picked 5th in the SEC West. What were you thinking when you saw that? You thought that was right, or did you think, hey, maybe they're underestimating this Tiger team?
I think everyone thought the defense was going to be strong. I think the questions all centered around the offense. Joe Burrow, we didn't know what we were getting there. The running back situation, no star running back returning. A lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. And, Scott, the overwhelming thing when it came to those picks was the schedule. Alabama, Georgia, another trip to the Swamp, Texas A&M to close out the year, Mississippi State, like you talked about, coming to Tiger Stadium, and an opener with a Miami team that was preseason top 10. So I think that kind of laid into the predictions. But it is funny. I mean, you and I go back a bit, and Curly Hallman won 16 games in 4 years at LSU.
Right.
And Ed Ogeron almost won 10 in his first year.
Right.
And I'm hearing he's on the hot seat and he's got to win. It shows where we are compared to where it's been.
And the funny thing you just said about that, I mean, you say almost 10, and really, and I hate to put it on a kicker. We've seen what this kicker can do compared to last year. And I'm just saying the special teams in general. You were almost 11-2, and I hate to say almost, but if you had somebody to kick over 25 yards, do you think if they were 11-2 instead of 9-4, that magic number, that you may have had less prognosticators predicting such a low thing? Because honestly, it wasn't too far-fetched at 11-2. I know Troy's a bad loss, but they finished 6-1 down the stretch in the SEC.
Yeah, it's funny to always hear that these bowl games are meaningless. They're not meaningless because when you win them, it gives you all this positive feeling going. And when you lose them, which that LSU Notre Dame
in the last second too.
Yeah, and Scott, it was a circus on special teams. I think they missed a 23-yard field goal. They missed like a 30-yard field goal. It was DJ Chark fielding a punt at his own 1-yard line. I mean, special teams were a circus in that game. So you got Greg McMahon to coach the special teams full-time. Cole Tracy, they only get him for a year. That's the only bad thing Coach O can say about Cole Tracy. But he has been phenomenal. 54-yarder against
LSU record
Miami.
Ties one? I mean,
a 50-yarder against Southeastern. And they're making extra points. How about that? And then Avery Atkins on kickoffs, a guy from Auburn, a preferred walk-on. I mean, he's booming the ball into the end zone on every kick, love Les Miles and everything. But, man, they would try that corner kick in so many games and kick the ball out of bounds and momentum killer so many times on that. This guy is putting it in the end zone, and they got 2 good punters to do the pooch thing and the deep thing, so it's going well.
I hate that I don't get to go to LSU games. That's the only downside of having to be gone working college football on the weekend, because I'm an LSU grad. I love going to the games. I like going to Tulane and Saints games as well. But what is the vibe like? And I know this isn't just LSU, because I think college football in general, everybody's falling in love with their 90-inch TV sets.
Yeah.
Are you getting the same vibe at the stadium? I know Southeastern's one thing. We'll find out more when some of these SEC teams, particularly Georgia and Alabama, come in. But what is the vibe at LSU right now?
It's changed. There's no doubt it's changed. And when I get on this topic, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'm not saying fans are bad. It's across college football. My grandfather used to say he didn't understand people that would drive 4 hours from Shreveport or whatever to go see an LSU game and leave at halftime.
Right.
I kind of understand that. I mean, even if you're stuck in traffic, okay, listen to the post-game show if you're a big LSU fan, So a lot of fans leave at halftime. A lot of fans don't show up. I go back to that 2000 year, Nick Saban's first year, when everyone was just so hungry to win.
Right.
And the stadium was packed.
Right.
The LSU-Tennessee game, the LSU-Mississippi State game that year went to overtime. Both of them did. And just the fans staying in it from start to finish. It's different now. People want to stay at home. They want to watch their big screen TV. They don't want to pay. They can't drink beer in Tiger Stadium for the most part. The concessions aren't great according to some people, and the traffic and the parking and all those different things. So a lot of people, it's kind of sad. It's just not the way it used to be.
Well, you saw Sunday night. I mean, they're down 20-0. Nobody from Lambeau's leaving, and they win that game 24-23. You saw it in Tiger Stadium last year. Auburn beat them down for a half. I mean, it was ugly. That could have been 40-0. And the Tigers came back and won, and I don't know the percentage of people that left, but I know a large amount did. It's not impossible to come back in some of these games and make them special. I know sometimes they're even leaving in close games, but when you have a big rival, say Georgia or Alabama gets a 2-touchdown lead, you can't leave the stadium.
It's I've seen fans leave close games. I mean, I guess it's one thing when you're beating Southeastern, you know you're going to win. Okay, we're getting out of here or whatever. But yeah, I've seen some close games where people bail at halftime. I mean, you would think that there is a bomb that's going to go off in the second half, and people are sprinting to their cars to get out. But people say, I can't wait for LSU football. I can't wait for LSU football. You get 7 little home games, and I guess I'd stay start to finish. But
sometimes this LSU team over the years has played better when the expectations have been lower. This defense is going to keep you in games. Talk first about how dominant they can be, and also will that loss in big games of K'Lavon Chaisson hurt this team?
Yeah, Chaisson was a unique talent. I think all of the LSU players were saying they felt like he could break Arden Key's sack record, and he could do some special things. He certainly looked the part physically. The other guys they've got, Ray Thornton, Andre Anthony, I think those guys will do some good things, but I think Chaisson was a cut above. Devin White's going to be an all-timer, there's no doubt. I mean, he is just a special, special player. His motor is always running, relentless speed. Tackles everybody and everything. And then they're doing some new things this year, like Grant Delpit, the safety. They're moving him up into the box, and he's like an extra linebacker. Devin White told us yesterday we call it our front 7 plus Grant Delpit. So he's, I think, the leader in sacks after 2 games. So Dave Aranda, to use a baseball analogy, is mixing up his pitches even more this year. In the past, they kept it simple, and they've been pretty successful. But this year, he's mixing in the curveball and the off-speed pitch and some different defenses they haven't run before.
Talk about that secondary, because obviously you have a preseason All-American and Greedy Williams, but you have some young guys, the guys that haven't played on the other side, and obviously the safeties are solid. But talk about particularly the cornerbacks. I mean, you saw some inconsistent play against Miami, particularly when they get a couple penalties late. What should we expect from there?
Well, Christian Fulton, that was just, I don't want to overstate it and call it a miracle, but it was kind of a miracle. I mean, the NCAA never changes their mind.
But why did they do it?
Everyone said it was the day after the Urban Meyer thing, and he only got, 3 games for what he was doing, and, why penalize this kid 2 years for,
2 years?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It is...
But he's playing
the justice is all over the board when it comes to the NCAA.
That's Dale Brown. We know that.
Right. So, they get him back, and everyone loved him. Everyone loves him. I mean, you saw the celebration in the locker room and whatnot, and he kept practicing hard. I mean, he could have gotten out of shape, gotten fat. Hey, I ain't going to play. What am I doing? But he stayed the course, and now he's getting to play. So that's a cool story. Kerry Vincent's another player. Jontre Kirkland from Letcher High School. got some talent there.
The true freshman, Joseph, was playing.
Yeah, I should have mentioned him. Yeah, Kelvin Joseph from Scotlandville. Everyone said, he's got a safety's body. I don't know if he can turn his hips and do the things that he needs to do at corner, but he's been exceptional. He's been baptized by fire, got beat by for a touchdown against Miami, but he's going to be a great one.
Obviously, a lot of people like to call LSU DBU because they have tons of players in the NFL, Patrick Peterson, Honey Badger, et cetera. But the front seven is where they make a living in college. So this front seven, is it compare to some of the great ones they've had?
I don't know if there's a Glenn Dorsey up there or whatnot. Rashard Lawrence, a great player. This guy right here, 91, Braden Fehoko, love him. Love his family. They're from Hawaii. We saw them in Arlington. They said that they just got here. They had taken the canoe 6 months to get to the first game.
That's great.
They were drinking this Polynesian drink off the root of peppermint called kava, and they were celebrating the comeback of Braden Fehoko after transfer.
Did it have any adult beverage part in that?
It was totally non-alcoholic,
really?
But I tell you,
Okay.
it burns your throat like maybe some whiskey might. But he's a great player. Glenn Logan, they're high on him and what he can do this year.
Yes.
Last year they were basically, it was Christian Lockett, Greg Gilmore, Rashard Lawrence, and rotating in maybe a Frank Heron. Neil Farrell had a big game this past week as well. So they got more depth. They got more guys that can play. They'll need it 2:30 in the afternoon at Auburn this weekend.
Yeah, speaking to that, tell me about that game. What do you think that they have to do to try to pull a victory out of it?
Well, LSU's only won there twice in their last 9 trips. Jarrett Lee come back after Andrew Hatch, which is a statement to Joe Burrow. Hey, slide. Remember Andrew Hatch got knocked out of that game.
Yeah.
But and then a bad game. LSU was highly ranked, and that was the Auburn team that went winless. Gene Chizik got fired in 2012. LSU barely won 12-10 that day. So it's been hard to win there. It's going to be very, very loud. I am very skeptical of how well LSU is going to be able to run the ball on the offensive line, hold up against Auburn's front seven. But, hey, they were an underdog against Miami and blew the doors off. Maybe they're a big game team and will come through.
I lived about 2 hours away for 20 years, so I went to that rival game a lot. And I've seen everything up close and personal, from the 4-interception Jamie Howard game to the burning library that was an inferno right behind us. And but these games always seem to be somewhat epic. I'm not saying every single one, but if you talk about the last 20 years, I know Bama's had their share, but I would think Auburn, LSU, maybe even more close games.
I talked to Jacob Hester about this yesterday. We talked about the 04 game, the Ronnie Prude call on the extra point.
Yes,
remember that?
Yes.
And then 06.
Yes. I'm still upset.
My distant cousin, Early Doucet, in 2006 was mugged. They drop a flag. They pick it up. Just a frustrating 7-3. They lost that game that day. So there have been some crazy things. My best childhood memory, the earthquake game, Tommy Hodson to Eddie Fuller in the back of the end zone. What a crazy night that was. So
that's the only time I sat in the upper deck at Tiger Stadium because I couldn't get my tickets. And sure enough, I'm with Auburn fans nonstop. The most boring game in history. It was 3-0 the whole way, and then it became 6-3 or whatever it was, 6-0. Right? Whatever it was, we won 7-6, and I was like that one play, and I'm like, it is shaking up there. I'm like, I'm out of here. Yeah. But this should be a great series. One last thing about this: receivers at LSU. We know as a running school, but they seem to have so many great receivers go to the NFL. Are there any type receivers like that on this team?
Well, guys like Drake Davis, who are not with the team right now, Stephon Sullivan, D. Anderson, they were the upperclassmen. They were given a chance to kind of start, and these younger pups have passed them up. Jamar Chase, the outstanding move this past weekend against Southeastern. Marshall, another outstanding talent. The latest Jefferson, Ricky is going to be an outstanding player, was the leading receiver against Miami. Jonathan Giles is the guy they want to get involved. He only has one catch through 2 games. Texas Tech transfer, put up big numbers at Texas Tech. He'd be great in the short passing game, which I think they may need to incorporate at Auburn with that front seven coming after Joe Burrow. He needs to get the ball out of his hands quick.
Jacques Doucet from WAFB in Baton Rouge. I mean, if you're in Baton Rouge, you know they are the leader. Steve Snyder and Jacques have been doing this for years. Steve for 3 decades, Jacques for almost 2. They do a fantastic job. They seem to put so many people out into greener pastures. Your interns just seem to become stars in the future. Some of them
I tell you what, like you said, I've been working almost 20 years. Kelsey Wingert comes in. A year later, she's working for the Atlanta Braves. I mean, I need a new agent, right?
You need a new agent. There you go. I can't give you that, but I can give you 2 things. A nice gift certificate. That is Shays Delachey's, part of the Delachey's family.
Beautiful.
Right there around the river bend, right there on Maple between Carrollton and Broadway, he likes to say. And by the way, I don't know if you have many task shirts, but it is the softest material you'll ever put on your body.
Beautiful.
Drew Brees, Sean Payton, they all wear that, plus a lot of great athletes. Enjoy.
Thank you,
Jacques.
Scott.
I appreciate you, man.
All right, anytime.
Hey, I want to thank Mike Triplett. I also want to thank John Blancher and, of course, Jacques Doucet. Next week, we're going to have Chuck Giallo's coming in. He is obviously the Pelicans power forward. And it's either next week or the week after. Dell Dempsey, GM for the Pelicans, will be here as well. Hey, I want to thank William Hill is his name, and Naila Jones, the Redhead Tsunami, and everyone over at WLAE, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and, of course, CST as well, Jeff Brenner, Ashley Coleman. Thank you all. We'll see you again next week right here on Primetime Sports.